Chang in New York, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up in the next hour, listening in, an aide to a top Republican lawmaker revealed a controversial NSA monitoring program has quietly shut down. What does it mean for data privacy and surveillance? Plus, Tesla's blind side. CEO Elon Musk caught many employees by surprise with his announcement last week that the car maker would shutter most of its stores and move sales online. This as shares of Tesla fall to their lowest levels since October. And Google is denying a new report that claims it is continuing to work on launching a censored search engine in China. We will discuss the status of Project Dragonfly. But first, to our top story, the NSA appears to be ending a controversial program that logged the phone calls of millions of Americans. At least that's what an aide for House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy told the national security website Lawfare over the weekend. The program, which has its roots in the government response to the September 11th attacks, collected the records of 543 million calls in 2017 and 151 million the year before that. It should be noted that in those years, court orders were used to target terrorism suspects 42 and 40 times, respectively. The aide said that the Trump administration hasn't used the program in over 6 months and that authorities may not seek to renew it at the end of the year. To discuss, I want to bring in Mark Ray, Managing Director and the Head of Digital Investigations and Cyber Defense at Nardello. Before that, he was a special agent for the FBI Cyber Division. He joins us now from Atlanta. So, Mark, what does this mean?
Well, I think what it means is that these programs are becoming obsolete, and for many reasons. Number one, I think we're seeing the repercussions of the Snowden incident from 2013 when Edward Snowden revealed these techniques. He really burned the government's techniques, and therefore we see the terrorists and other threat actors move to other platforms, and it coincides with the emergence of these secure messaging platforms we've seen over the years, in the recent years, like Signal and WhatsApp, and therefore these programs just don't serve the purposes of national security anymore, and therefore they just are not serving the purpose of defending our country, and they've also raised a number of privacy issues. So what do security officials look at now? I mean, is it looking at apps like Signal? Where do they find the threats? Well, I think as I just mentioned, the threat actors are looking to hide their communications. So certainly any program that touches U.S. companies, such as these programs did with the telecommunications industry, or even the large internet service providers such as Google, Facebook, and others, they're going to avoid communications. So government intelligence agencies are going to have to step up their game as well. And I don't think they're going to be able to rely on the cooperation of the private sector anymore for their intelligence purposes. What
about other collection methods like PRISM and the backdoors into U.S. technology companies?
Yeah, well, I think the key to programs like those were cooperation with the private sector. And more and more companies are seeing that this is a privacy issue, that they don't want to be associated with those programs. The interesting thing is, on a daily basis, platforms like Google and Facebook and others collect probably 10 times the intelligence that these other programs did from even 5 or 10 years ago. So you're going to see them disassociating themselves more and more, while in the cyber industry, we're trying to enhance cooperation between the public and private sector globally. When it comes to the privacy of people's information, companies just want it to be legal and to be above board. So eavesdropping and things like that just aren't accepted anymore. So the government is going to have to change their techniques, and hopefully they are, to the point where it's serving the national security purposes in a way that the bad guys don't find out about.
So given that, let's not kid ourselves. Can't the U.S. government just find other ways to surveil U.S. citizens if they want to?
I think we live in a country where, luckily, privacy matters. And despite what we hear about on both sides of the political aisle, the U.S., unlike other countries, I think really does do this for the purpose of national security, not to pry into privacy issues. I think if this conversation was happening in other countries, Emily, that we wouldn't be having the privacy issue. It would just be more about what information can they get and how can we get it quicker and faster.
So if this program goes away, do you think anything really replaces it, or it just becomes obsolete?
Well, I think it becomes obsolete because of the technology, of course. Again, the bad guys know that this metadata is being analyzed and correlated by the U.S. government. So why would they call people in the U.S., which is the nature of the program, right? Analyzing phone numbers and timestamps on U.S. phone records and text messages. So they're just not using that. So the value, I hope there's metrics that are tied to it, really, and that will really prove whether the programs are worthwhile or not. But the threat actors are moving to these secure messaging platforms and even social media programs as well.
Is anything really secure, though? Like when Signal says the messages are encrypted, are they really?
Well, encryption is nearly impossible to break. I know there's government agencies that are trying to do that, and even private sector organizations that try to break encryption, but it's pretty hard to do. However, nothing is secure to be 100% secure, to answer your question, and there's always ways around it. Social engineering, compromised credentials, those are the weak links that can be always be compromised.
All right, Mark Ray of Nardello, thank you so much for stopping by.
Sticking
with national security, Huawei is looking to reassure the EU that its technology is safe to use in next-gen 5G infrastructure. The company opened a cybersecurity center in Brussels to give people an inside look at what will be running in its networking technology. Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo was there and filed this report.
Huawei on a very European charm offensive. They just opened a new cybersecurity center here in Brussels. The company will tell you the allegations put forward by the U.S. government that it somehow carries industrial espionage for the Chinese authorities are false, and that they can do a job just as good as any other American company. Now, for the European Union, the challenge here is to balance those geopolitical tensions, and we know the U.S. is pushing very hard on the EU to drop Chinese technology with the business reality of it. And that is the fact that Huawei can do a good job when it comes to 5G technology, and they can do it for less money. A lot of CEOs in Europe will tell you in the telecom space, if we're banned and restricted from using Chinese technology, inevitably the cost will go up. Maria Tadeo, Bloomberg News, Brussels.
Coming up, Redfin is working to close tech's gender gap. How the real estate company is creating its own pipeline of female talent next. And if you like Bloomberg News, you can check us out on the radio, listen on the Bloomberg app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. When Bridget Frey joined real estate company Redfin in 2011, she was one of a handful of female engineers. She was promoted to chief technology officer, and within just a few years, women accounted for 1 in 3 of Redfin's hundreds of engineers. Under Frey, Redfin trained women with non-traditional backgrounds and even pulled the company's own marketing specialists for engineering roles. And this has paid off on the bottom line as well. I outline this story in my book, Brotopia, Breaking Up the Boys Club of Silicon Valley, which is out in paperback today with a new afterword addressing the progress women have made in tech in the last year. And Redfin Chief Technology Officer Bridget Frey joins us now from Seattle. Bridget, thank you so much for joining us. It was so great to have a positive story of progress to highlight in the book. And I want you to share what you did, how you recruited women who didn't necessarily have the technical skills that you might have looked for in a typical job candidate, and turned them into engineers that actually then went on to progress at the company.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we did is look for women who were working in roles that were just adjacent to software development. So for example, someone who was in a technical marketing role. And then we used all of this training that we had built to teach them how to build software at Redfin. And what we found along the way is that it's just much easier to teach someone how to code than it is to teach them how to be a decent human being, someone who can work collaboratively on a team. And these women are doing really well now, and it's been this huge competitive advantage for Redfin because we're able to recruit engineers from pipelines that other people can't.
So instead of complaining about the pipeline, you created your own pipeline. But how did you know that it was really working and that these women could then go on to be promoted and successful at the company?
Yeah, so one thing that we did is we measure everything. So we're a very data-driven company, and so we looked at everything about our numbers. We look at our numbers on gender diversity every time we go through a promotion cycle. We've published data on our pay gap publicly, and by looking at these numbers, we can really see the progress. We can see if people are getting stuck. We can see if we need to make adjustments to what we're doing.
Now, in addition, you found that this paid off from a business perspective, and you were working on your home touring product. It, had taken years to get it right. It still wasn't quite right, but somehow when you added women to the team and built a more diverse team, you ended up making an extra $30 million. How did that happen?
That's right. So we'd been working for years on how to automate this process of scheduling a home tour with a Redfin agent. We'd built all this software, and we kept tweaking it and trying to make it work, but we were just finding that our real estate agents weren't adopting the software. They weren't using it. And then we assigned a new team, and it was a team that had more gender diversity. And that team, almost from day one, just took a completely different approach. They said, we're not going to build any more software. Instead, we're going to step back, and we're going to really listen to the real estate agents. We're going to spend time with them. We're going to shadow them and see how they're using the software. And this gave them a whole new set of ideas that they never would have gotten if they hadn't taken that empathetic approach. And so what we've seen at Redfin is when we build a team with people from different backgrounds, they have to listen to each other. They have to stretch more, and that means that we end up building better products for our agents and our customers.
So what do you think that other companies can learn from this?
Yeah, so I think that it really takes a lot of small changes to make your company more diverse and more inclusive. We've almost thought of ourselves as these diversity mechanics who are crawling over everything that we do, how we interview people, how we develop careers, even how we run meetings. And so you have to really settle in and be prepared to make a lot of small changes along the way if you want to build a more inclusive company.
Now, I want to talk to you about other tech initiatives happening at Redfin. You've got your instant offer iBuyer service. You've got these algorithms that everybody wants to know exactly how they work. How exactly do you decide how much a home is worth? What data are you using?
Yeah, so we have an incredible data set at Redfin. So we have all this information about how people are visiting our website, how they're looking at homes. But because we're a real estate brokerage, we also have real estate agents who are walking through homes with our customers. They're making offers. We know which homes are being toured and which aren't. So it gives us this very rich data set to see how people are reacting to the homes that are on the market. And what that means is that we've been able to build the most accurate online home value estimate in the industry.
Now, we are in more uncertain times now, politically, potentially economically. There has been a bit of a housing downturn. Do you know how well your algorithms perform in a downturn?
Yeah, so we've measured that too. Like I said, we're a very data-driven company, and so we're always looking at those numbers. And of course, there is more uncertainty when the macroeconomic environment changes. Pricing algorithms can take a little time to adapt to that, but we've been very pleased with how that algorithm is performing. And I think, again, that real-time data we get from agents and customers who are walking through homes, that is able to feed into the algorithm and tell us what we think homes will sell for.
All right, Redfin Chief Technology Officer Bridget Frey, thank you so much for stopping by and for sharing the story of how you changed your team with me in Brotopia. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Coming up, Transferwise continues to gain ground on banks that have traditionally dominated the wholesale payments and cash management industry. We're going to talk to the company's CEO next. This is Bloomberg. The payments company Transferwise has appointed Goldman Sachs to advise on a secondary offering of shares worth $200 million. This according to Sky News. The proposed deal could value Transferwise at about $4 billion, more than double the level set in a share sale about 18 months ago. For more, we're joined by Transferwise CEO Christo Carmen. Thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you in person. So what would this mean for the company?
Transferwise started about 10 years ago, and the problem that we're solving is moving money across borders. We figured out that banks will tell you it costs about $35 to make an international wire. What they don't tell you is that there's about a 3-5% markup in the exchange rate. So what we've achieved so far is brought Transferwise to about 71 countries around the world, and we're moving now about $4 billion every month. So this is roughly the the thing we've been able to build with kind of the funding and the support from our users from about 10 years ago.
So there's a busy IPO pipeline. Could TransferWise be in that pipeline?
Not necessarily, no. We don't see a huge benefit in being a public company. We see that there's a very good funding market for private companies today.
So why not? Why is there no benefit to being a public company?
I think companies can still move quite a bit faster when they remain private. I think that's very important for tech companies.
So are you saying never?
No, I'm not saying never. I'm saying not now.
There's been a rise of these so-called challenger banks, which have gotten a lot of attention lately. What does that mean for your business?
The challenger banking or the change that's happening to traditional banks is super interesting. And we see that a lot in Europe, which has given us good challengers in Germany, in Britain, in France now. So this is a kind of testament that a better service, whether that's cheaper, faster, more convenient, can actually be quite competitive to the traditional banks.
Would you ever buy one of these fintech companies or merge with them?
I don't see that we need to do that. In fact, we see that a lot of those challenger banks and traditional banks offer Transferwise to their users. So we see them rather as partners who are making it better to offer the Transferwise services to the public.
Would you ever apply for a banking license?
We haven't really seen the need for that because, again, the regulators have been pretty smart and realized that you need a banking license if you're making loans and if you're taking deposits and then giving it out in loans without keeping it fully collateralized.
So you have lost a few fairly senior employees, the head of Asian expansion, the head of banking. Why is that happening, and how have you filled those roles?
So Transferwise today, just to put things in context, we're 1,400 people in about 11 offices around the world.
So people come and go, right?
People mostly come, and we need a lot more. So I think we have about 130 open roles all over the world, including New York.
But for those who might be concerned about the turnover at the top, what do you want to say to them?
We see people who come to Transferwise, they actually stay for a very, very long time. And the reason being is they're really motivated by what we do. It's very clear how we're helping people save money. So we actually calculate every day, every month, how many millions of dollars we've saved our users in banking fees. And that's super inspiring.
All right, Christo Carmen, CEO of Transferwise, thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily.
For stopping by. All right, the sell-off in Tesla shares resumed today with shares falling to their lowest levels since October. It began last week in the wake of CEO Elon Musk's surprise move to close most of the electric car maker stores and shift to online-only sales. Bloomberg has learned that many Tesla sales staff found out about the decision when they read the blog post. Joining us now, Bloomberg's Dana Hull in San Francisco. And Dana, you've been breaking news on this story over the last several days. So tell us what these employees are saying.
Well, they were really blindsided, and I think that was made clear by the fact that the news was posted, publicly on a blog post, and they found out about it. And apparently, they found out when the media found out. Today, I'm getting a lot of emails from people saying, "Thank you so much for writing this, capturing how we felt." It just was really stunning for the staff.
So the stores are already closing. You reported that there's a store in Honolulu that's closed. There's a store in Palm Springs that's closed. And if you call those stores, it's rerouted to another location.
Exactly. Yeah, our understanding was that Musk was going to be evaluating the stores, but it's very clear that the low-performing stores or the stores that did not get a lot of traffic are already closed.
Now, let's talk about the reaction from investors. Shares have recovered a little bit from their lows today, but we spoke to one investor who sold all of his Tesla shares, an asset manager. This investor also tweeted, his name is Alex Chalakian. "It pains me to say this, since I really love the company, but we have sold our position in Tesla for our advisory clients. I believe that the decision to close retail stores is a bad one and points to the weakness in sales and financial strength of the company." Is that what most of the negative or pessimistic investors here are telling you?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important to notice that Alex lives in Pasadena. He owns a Tesla. He owns a Model S. I mean, he's been very pro-Tesla for a while, but I think he has as a manager, he has a fiduciary responsibility to his clients. And this decision to close the stores was a complete 180 from what Tesla had been saying they were planning to do if you look at all of their regulatory filings.
Exactly. Last quarter, they opened multiple stores, including more stores than they had in any quarter in a year and a half. And in their 10K, they also touted their retail strategy. So it doesn't seem like something that Tesla was considering for a while. It certainly does seem like it was an abrupt decision.
Exactly, and I think that's what caught investors off guard. I mean, to be clear, there is an argument to be made that Americans and people around the world are shifting most of their purchases to online. There are a lot of dealerships and startups kind of trying to help dealers with the online sales process. So it's not unreasonable that Tesla would want to experiment with online sales, but to sort of announce that they're completely shuttering most of their stores and switching to online only, that really caught people by surprise.
Now, I do
including the staff.
I do want to talk about Tesla's employment worldwide. They employ almost 50,000 people, and looking at this chart in my Bloomberg, headcount has been increasing significantly year on year. But you're reporting, new information that there are now dozens of jobs that are going to go away at the Fremont factory. Tell us the very latest in terms of just how many jobs are actually going away.
Sure. So in January, Tesla did a 7% reduction in force worldwide. And then on the call last Thursday, when they announced this pivot to online sales, Musk acknowledged that they would be laying off a lot of the sales and marketing people, but hopefully shifting some of those positions to either the stores that are remaining open or to service jobs.
All right, Danaho, I know you'll continue to keep us posted on this story as this one continues to develop. Thank you so much for your reporting on this over the last few days, and as always. Coming up, will they or won't they? Google still says it has no plans for a censored search engine in China, but a new report says that may not be the case. We're going to discuss next. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Technology Global Link, where we join Bloomberg Daybreak Australia to bring you the latest in global tech news. I'm Emily Chang in New York with Sherry Ann and Heidi Stroud-Watts in Sydney. Let's take a look at the global tech stories of the day, shall we? Sherry, what do you got?
Emily, SoftBank's Vision Fund has raised $3 billion thanks to a loan from banks like Goldman Sachs and Mizuho. The money will help bridge funding gaps in deals. That's according to sources. The Vision Fund is the world's single largest pool of capital for technology investments. France is getting ready to levy a new digital tax against companies like Google, Facebook, and Twitter. This would go into effect on March 6th and would be Europe's first such tax. It would be a 3% tax on companies with annual digital revenue over $849 million globally and $24 million in France. That's according to an interview that France's finance minister gave to newspaper Le Parisien. And Google has said it will not allow political ads in this year's Canadian elections. According to a company spokesperson, Google will not accept advertising on all of its ad platforms, including YouTube, Search, and Ad Exchange, for the remainder of the 2019 elections. Those are the top global tech stories we're watching. Emily.
Thank you, Sherry. I want to stick with Google, specifically the continued debate over a possible Chinese search engine. This was the scene on Capitol Hill in December when CEO Sundar Pichai defended Google against reports that the company was working with the Chinese government on a censored search engine.
Right now, we have no plans to launch in China. We don't have a search product there. Our core mission is to provide users access to information, and getting access to information is an important human right. So we are always compelled across the world to try hard to provide that information.
Well, a new report from The Intercept is saying that Google employees have been investigating that claim themselves, and they claim to have found code changed as recently as February of this year to indicate continued development on the project known as Dragonfly. So what's going on? To discuss, we've got Bloomberg Tech's Garrett DeVink, who covers Alphabet. So what are employees saying exactly?
So what this story was saying was essentially that some employees said they didn't really trust Google when they said what you saw Sundar Pichai say there, that they were going to, kind of put this aside. And so they've been watching some of the code within kind of the public databases at Google, and they claim that there have been changes to the code that was used being put together for a potential China search engine. Now, Google is pretty unequivocal that they're not doing this at all.
Right. Google did release a statement saying this speculation is inaccurate. As we've said for many months, we have no plans to launch search in China, and there is no work being undertaken on such a project. Team members have moved to new project. How do we square this?
I think, Google's been very clear. I mean, this is something that they probably don't want to be lying about and then be found out again that they actually were doing this. But they're not going to, come out and say we're never, ever, ever, ever going to do this, pinky swear. Like, this is a huge company that doesn't, that they want to be around for 100 years, and they don't know what the future's going to look like.
I want to hear Sundar say pinky swear.
And I think what's really going on here is that people don't trust Google anymore. Like, maybe they shouldn't have ever trusted them, but at this point, people see this as a big company trying to make money, going to do what it takes to do that.
Yeah, maybe he's just crossing his fingers behind his back there, right? But Garrett, we saw last year that Greater China revenue jumped over 60%. It was a pretty good result. Are there good monetary reasons why they wouldn't be shutting down all options at this point?
I mean, Google owns Android, which is, the most important operating system in China, not just on mobile, in any kind of world. I mean, Google has a massive presence there. Its technology is used daily by most Chinese people. And so the company, in a way, has a very strong presence there. Chinese app developers build all kinds of apps using Google's APIs and its technology. It was the search engine that really hit sort of the nerve within the company, because people felt that they didn't want to be helping the Chinese government to censor search results.
Yeah, and also, there's probably a point to be made that even if they were to get back into the market, it's pretty hard to get any kind of advantage given how far behind and how dominant the local search engines are there.
I mean, on that point, it's very true. Google has no, position in search. But when you talk to Googlers, when you talk to people here in the States about it, I mean, they still believe that their technology is better than the local players. And I think some people within Google, they were kind of chomping at the bit to see if they could solve the search problem in China, if they could make a real run there. I think they truly believe that if they were able to do this, that they could have been successful. But of course, their employees pushed back very strongly, and they had to make this decision.
So let's talk about this broader issue of employee activism, which has been, a particularly big issue at Google. And Google employees have made progress with their activism, especially as it comes to forced arbitration, and perhaps on this China issue as well. Should Google be concerned that its own employees are investigating the company from within?
I mean, I think, you could look at it two ways. I mean, on the one hand, Google employees have caused a lot of headaches for management this year. I was at a conference a few months ago, and a CEO was speaking, and someone from the audience asked, like, who's really running the company? Are you running the company, or are, your activist employees running the company? And, on some issues, I think, there is broad support within the company, particularly when it comes to the gender pay cap. I would say most Googlers are very concerned about that. And some issues, it is a smaller subset of Googlers that are concerned about it. But at the end of the day, I mean, the company, has always pitched to its employees, come work on the world's biggest problems with us, do the things that you want to do and make a difference. And if they want to keep saying that, they have to, allow that their employees are going to push back on some things that they don't agree with.
Garrett, thank you so much for joining us. Bloomberg's Garrett DeVink, who covers Alphabet, there with us in New York. Still playing on Bloomberg TV. This is Bloomberg.
New York's tech scene is growing up. Venture capital investment is ballooning. Tech giants like Google have added thousands of jobs in the city, and homegrown startups are beginning to find multi-billion-dollar exits. And that's even as tech giant Amazon has pulled out of its plans to build a second headquarters in Queens. But the question continues to be, will New York ever become the next Silicon Valley? Let's bring in our next guest, Michael Loeb, CEO of Loeb.nyc, a rebranding of Loeb Enterprise with a new focus on startup investing. Also with us, Matt Harris, Managing Director of Bain Capital. Matt focuses on investments in financial technology and services. And I'm normally based in San Francisco, but I'm totally unbiased. Will New York ever become the next Silicon Valley?
Well, I don't think we want to become the next Silicon Valley. I think we're going to have kind of our own vibe and own charisma and kind of own personality. But it's nice to have another Silicon Valley because last I looked, Silicon Valley has been doing pretty well. So
all of this said, I said multi-billion-dollar exits there, but we've never seen a $10 billion tech company in New York yet. Will we?
I don't know if you consider WeWork a tech company, but it's certainly a dozens
It's not yet a public company,
Indeed.
but yes, it does have a multi-billion-dollar valuation, though I can't think of another one.
It falls off pretty quickly after WeWork, but I think it's notable because it's a commercial real estate company, and it's what you see here in New York, which is industries that matter, not just pure technology, although we have plenty of that, but industries that matter with a fresh technology-driven approach, creating billions of dollars of value. I think that's what New York does well.
As opposed to San Francisco, where the industries don't matter, right? Anyway.
No offense taken. How big a blow is Amazon pulling out?
You want to take that one on?
I think the way it was handled is a blow. I think people want to face off against New York and have a counterparty they can trust and rely on. I think the way it was handled was poor. I think the outcome doesn't matter that much. I personally would have enjoyed having Amazon here, but we've got plenty of homegrown companies as well as Facebook and Google.
Michael, what went wrong?
Well, first of all, I respectfully disagree. I think it's a body blow. I think that the behavior of the blah, blah, blasio was absolutely despicable. I think I liken that to, he is supposed to be the #1 salesman for New York. And it's kind of like if I had a salesman that didn't make the sale and blamed the client for not signing on the dotted line, they're fired.
So what should the mayor have done?
Well, the mayor, by the way, the mayor should have done what any good salesman has done, which is handheld the client to make sure that not only was the horse to the water, but the horse is actually drinking. So I put the blame solidly on him. And AOC, and Giaris, I don't know his name, but that's State Senator.
State Senator Michael Gianaris, Congresswoman-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Matt, shouldn't Amazon have known better in many ways that it needed to build its constituency?
I don't think Amazon has an obligation to do that, but I would say they ran the process in general with a tin ear. I think in this climate, having 220 municipalities compete, spend money, spend resources, knowing that the vast majority we're going to lose, was tone deaf. And I don't think Amazon's going to suffer from it, but I think in retrospect, they could have done it better.
Okay, so Michael, you think it's a body blow. How? How does New York suffer?
Well, New York has had some tremendous momentum, and I think about, the Cornell initiative, which Bloomberg actually sparked. I think the momentum of, Google buying Chelsea Markets for $2.4 billion. They got 7,000 or 8,000 employees here. You were seeing New York develop as, Silicon Valley Part 2. And I think a punctuation point on that would have been Amazon. I think that it is a statement that it is hard to do business here, that we don't welcome tech companies like we should. I think it's not just the loss of the 25,000 or so jobs. I think it's the meaning of it. It's what it signifies, which is we can't get it over the finish line. So I think it's despicable.
Well, respectfully, when's the last time you saw San Francisco offer an incentive for someone to move there? I mean, we, New York, need to be in a place where we don't have to offer tax breaks to get great companies to move here. They move here for the talent. I think we're actually there. Now, notwithstanding, I wish we had gotten Amazon. I think it was poorly handled, but a body blow is too hard.
So where are you investing? Where do you see the opportunities in New York, despite the fact that this has happened?
I'll take it. So we do 4 primary things in New York. We've done a lot of them. We've invested over $250 million in the past 5 years in fintech, which is what I do. Companies like IEX and JustWorks, commerce, Jet.com, Rent the Runway, healthcare, Able2, and Centivo, and then infrastructure software, which is relatively new for New York, but is that really a high growth area. Companies like Better Cloud, And so we see really across the board great entrepreneurs founding companies in New York.
I think State Senator Michael Gianars just tried to call you, Michael.
Exactly.
Good.
Here's a note. Here's a note.
I can't wait to talk to
But
him.
where are you investing and where do you see the opportunities?
Well, we're rather eclectic. We see many opportunities. Basically, we see a lot of disruption all over the market. We see a lot of talent here. A lot of young people love to be here because of the culture, the restaurants, the museums, the camaraderie. There's something about this fishbowl of New York and putting all these people here in such a concentrated place. We like fintech, we like health tech, we like retail tech. We like what the heck tech. We like anything with a big opportunity, anything that is big, disruptive, blue water. There's a lot of that these days with developments like, Facebook and all the other ways to reach a consumer. We never had a mechanism to reach 2 billion people all at once, and now we do.
All right. Well, I always love a friendly debate, so thank you for participating. We're going to have to do this again when I'm back. Michael Loeb, CEO of Loeb.nyc, and Matt Harris of Bain Capital. Thank you both.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Still ahead, wholesale retail startup Boxed's rapid growth and warehouse technology has drawn the attention of big retailers. How it plans to compete with online and traditional retail giants is next. We're going to be speaking with the CEO, another New York company. This is Bloomberg. While Amazon continues to threaten online retailers, one startup is holding its own. Wholesale retail startup Boxed has managed to differentiate itself from the e-commerce giant, offering a limited selection of household products in bulk sizes. It sells bulk size items like those found at Costco without the membership fees. And with advanced warehouse technology, it's raised over $250 million to date, drawing interest from traditional retailers like Kroger. Joining us to discuss is CEO Che Huang. Che, great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
I believe the last time you were on the show, you were talking about the transition to a fully automated warehouse. How has that transition actually proceeded?
It's proceeded rather quickly. So I would say probably 18 months ago was our first foray into full automation. And now, it's humming along. I would say that first week when we first turned it on, like most automation projects, you're just like, okay, what do we get ourselves into? But moving quickly, we turned the dial up 100% and really got through all the kinks and all through the different.
And you say you've actually added more jobs than you've lost.
We have, yeah.
How?
What's interesting is that it's like, it's we see it time and time again, yet there's this narrative that automation is going to kill everything and all jobs across the country. But I don't think that's the case. If you think about ATMs, they didn't kill the banking industry. There's probably more tellers there are these days, or more folks that work at banks than pre-ATM era. For Boxed, we used the improved economics, was able to grow our business. We were able to raise more money and actually use the improved economics to hire more people. And so now we have more folks on staff in the fulfillment centers than we did pre-automation.
Now, what's happening in the retail industry is very interesting because actually you're seeing offline retail giants like Walmart and Target figure out online, and they actually had pretty strong quarters. What does that say to you?
It says everyone is moving faster and faster. Even we have to move faster. So we've never been so full of hubris, even early on, to say, when most of Silicon Valley was saying that, retailers are dead. Like brick and mortar retailers, I don't shop there anymore, they're dead. But at the same time, brick and mortar retailers 5-6 years ago also said that, online pure play, that's a toy. So it ended up just being a race. Are retailers going to figure out technology faster than tech companies figure out retail? And everyone's kind of racing towards that final goal of an omni-channel experience.
Kroger did offer to buy you for $400 million last year. You turned them down. Why?
I would say we didn't turn them down. I would say it was, we learned a lot about them, a lot about the other folks that were interested in our business. And I remain really kind of in awe of what they've built over their long history, as well as all the other folks we had.
So if you didn't turn them down, what happened?
It was a bad day. I woke up and it just, didn't call them back. No, that's not how deals usually happen. But we got to know each other over that time. We got to know other companies as well. But we just felt like there's way more runway for us as a company. And when you think about online grocery and what we sell, we're not in the first inning anymore, but we're surely not in the fifth inning as well.
So would selling to a larger player like that still be something that you consider?
I would say we have to now, with this last $111 million round, led by a very traditional retailer that is Aeon Group, the biggest retailer in Japan, it gives us the runway to actually really play this out. So what do I mean by play it out? I think the best kind of thing we can do is march along the path to filing an S1 one day. And if we do that, any private kind of outcome will probably be optimized because our finances will be in place, our growth, our profitability will all be there.
Now, Amazon is continuing to beef up its Prime offerings, investing heavily in video, for example, obviously has the profitability of AWS to drive whatever they want to do on the e-commerce side. How do you compete with that?
So it's never easy, right? The good thing, though, is when we started the business from scratch 5 years ago, we didn't wake up and suddenly think, like, oh my gosh, what is this company, Amazon? Like, how are we going to do this, So starting off with limited assortment, so whenever we do sell something, we sell a lot of it. When we ship, it's 8 to 10 items on profitability. When we think about private brand, B2B, all these little kind of steps built into the overall profitability picture for us.
Now, I have to ask you about this because I just think it's so awesome, but you pay for your employees to get married. You pay for their weddings.
Not just weddings, but life-changing events like weddings, or if there's a loved one that's sick, or other things.
How do you think that's changed your company culture or improved your company culture? Like, why do you think it's important to do that?
I think it's important because when you think about us not having stores yet, our frontline retail employees, we don't have them because we don't have stores. But we have fulfillment center folks who can pack boxes the right way or pack boxes in a suboptimal way that leads to damages. And so for that kind of reason, from a practical basis, you want to treat them like they're part of the overall team. And for folks in the fulfillment centers, there's studies that show most Americans, 75% of Americans can't pay a $500 bill if they were just presented with one. And so helping them with life-changing events is really important to build a culture.
As you said, competition is stiff, and never say never. I'd never like to say never, but I feel like I can pretty safely say Jeff Bezos would never do that.
Maybe he thinks about it sometimes, but I don't know. There's also a business kind of aspect to it. At the end of the day, when you replace kind of a VP level person these days, it's $125,000 to a recruiter. If you replace a director or manager level, it's between $35,000 to $75,000. If you actually lower or increase retention, lower turnover, that's a really big pool of money that you can kind of use to help employees with big events like that.
Interesting. All right, Chae Huang, good to see you in person.
Thank you
so much for stopping by. Okay, Apple's move into original TV shows and movies is facing a complication. Disney CEO Bob Iger has sat on the board since 2011, and last week, the majority of shareholders said they would re-elect Iger to that seat. But will calls of a conflict of interest reach a breaking point? For more, I want to bring in Bloomberg's Mark Gurman in LA. So, Mark, who is calling this a conflict of interest?
So as we know, Iger has been on Apple's board since 2011. He also runs Disney, and we spoke to some corporate governance experts who say that this means that they're sort of going in each other's territory because they're both working on these streaming video services. And of course, Apple, as we know, at the end of this month, is going to officially enter the TV show and movie entertainment industry. They've been ramping up to this for quite some time. And of course, this is Bob Iger's bread and butter. The problem is that as the chairman and CEO of Disney, he's also going to become very quickly one of Apple's largest competitors. And this harkens back to something we saw about 10 years ago when Eric Schmidt, who was CEO of what was called Google at the time, now obviously Alphabet, had to recuse himself from many Apple board meetings. Of course, he was a board member back then, until Steve Jobs had him resign from the board because things were getting too complicated.
Now, what do we know at this point about Apple's streaming strategy? If you talk to folks in LA, they say Apple's moving pretty slowly. We don't actually know what they're working on or what their strategy is.
Right. I think it's complex to get to a simple type of thing. I think from a consumer perspective, someone who has not been following all the ins and outs and the drama, so to speak, on this project's development, we actually find it quite simple. So I'll talk about it from a consumer perspective. You have this TV app at the corner of your iPhone, your iPad, or iPod Touch. I imagine they'll bring this to the Apple TV. They already have the TV app and the Apple TV, but they'll bring this to the Apple TV as well. And the Mac, you can get all this original content that Apple is developing and providing, in addition to tapping into a subscription plan for things like HBO, Starz, and Showtime, combined with integration with apps like ESPN and the NBA app, plus the iTunes movie and TV show libraries. So a complete package of different entertainment offerings from Apple.
Apple does have this event coming up this month. We don't know a lot about it, but it appears to be tied to streaming. What have you learned so far?
Right, this is not something they've really done in the past. It didn't make sense when they were growing as a hardware maker, but now that they're positioning themselves more as a services company, it makes sense. So this is going to be a media event currently planned for March 25th at the Apple Park campus in Cupertino, California, where they typically hold these types of things, where they're going to be focusing on services. Now, as we know, Apple is working on 3 new services-related projects. One, obviously, this video project that we're talking about. Another is this premium magazine subscription service where you can subscribe to a bunch of magazines for one bundle price, around $10 a month. And they're also working with Goldman Sachs on this credit card, which would tie into Apple Pay. And they're waiting to release a new Apple Pay app for iPhones at the end of March, early April as well.
All right, well, I know you'll continue to keep us posted on updates as you have them. Mark Gurman for Bloomberg Tech, as always, in LA. Thank you. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. We are, of course, live streaming on Twitter. You can check us out there at Technology and follow our global breaking news network, TikTok, on Twitter. This is Bloomberg.